Good morning. My name is Emmett Kearney. I work for UNHCR in Geneva, and I'm presenting on behalf of those listed here who are on hand today to answer questions in the Q&A. We were asked to combine two separate submissions, but as one is more practical and developed, we're going to focus more on that one. There's a significant amount of text on these slides. Don't worry, I won't read it. I'll simply highlight what's relevant, and you can skim in the background. So the first submission relates to an ambitious and ongoing project to assess and solarize as many boreholes as possible in Chad and around refugee camps. Why is this project interesting? Well, where many solarization efforts are done camp by camp, site by site, based on available funds, this project aimed to not only carry out the work to improve the water supply to refugees and host communities, but also to develop a replicable and critically a technically rigorous method based on our previous work and lessons learned in hydrogeology, borehole rehabilitation, and solarization. They could serve as an example for others. One last point of introduction, I'm proud to note that this project has significant support from SDC, mainly in the form of human resources in the fields, as well as in the region and in HQ. Chad, you'll see a map and some key figures here. Chad is a country with a long history of hosting refugees. I know many of you have worked there. Some of you might have even been involved in the drilling of the boreholes we'll see here today. The data and the work shown here comes mainly from the east, but also from the south and the west. I'll let you follow this one on your own, but just to note that when asking which boreholes should we target, we did not only target those with electric pumps, but also looked at solarizing hand pumps as well. You can see the relevant points for each type of technology, but ultimately the takeaway from this slide is that in solarizing either type, we have the same requirement for a rigorous borehole diagnostic. So what is that diagnostic? There were 5 steps, which we'll get into one by one. But just to note that each step is eliminatory, so there's a natural funneling from all of the boreholes considered, 328, to those that were finally worth solarizing. On the right, you see some key information about the project and a picture of the team. Here's an overview of the steps involved. We'll return to this graphic at the end with the results. So let's jump into the steps themselves. Step 1 was an inventory and rapid assessment. The rapid assessment included looking at the static water level and some water quality parameters. You'll see in the top right hand corner in that red bubble, this was the number of boreholes eliminated at this step. Moving on to the camera inspection. Let me show a quick video with our colleague Vincent's narration.
Mais on dirait que la crépine, ils ont été sciés à la main. T'as vu, c'est pas régulier. 17, t'as dit 17. Ça, c'est pas régulier, la crépine. On dirait que ça a été scié. Et puis ouais, ça c'est de la crépine sciée à la main. Ça, c'est pas industriel, ça. C'est pas bon, ça. Ok, joint tube. Lecture. 17,90, prochain tube. 18. Par contre, ça, tu vois, là, elles sont toutes régulières.
Ah,
la crépine industrielle.
Okay.
Ouais, quoique. Oui, ouais, on dirait, ouais. Ouais.
Right, he was saying that at first they were passing some handmade screens that he wasn't happy about, and then at the end some industrial screens that were more acceptable. Step 3 is airlifting. We have another short video here.
Ici nous sommes à Timberi de là c'est le soufflage des forages de Timberi de forage 1.
step 4. So this is the calibration test. Critical for this are the 4 golden rules here on the right. Yeah, now we're getting into more interesting technical territory that isn't the focus here, but just to summarize, the calibration test or the equipment test is critical to have the right pump size at the right depth and to be able to know the maximum discharge rate to be able to carry out the test in step 5, which is the pumping test. This is a step drawdown pumping test, which requires at least 4 steps or flow rates. We should play a short video here.
Essai de pompage. Bonjour. 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 Oui, bonjour.
And what we're aiming for is to be able to draw the characteristic curve of the well and obtain the safe yield, which is critical for sustainable solar water scheme design. Right, here are the results summarized and simplified by step. On the next slide are the conclusions, but I'll start speaking to the first while leaving this slide up for a moment. I mean, in the end, we see that only 40% of the boreholes surveyed and diagnosed were worth solarizing. So this is an important reminder for those looking to carry out solarization, that it is always worth running a full diagnostic of a borehole before solarizing. First, to optimize the technical aspects of that solarization, the sizing of the solar scheme, connected to that confirmed safe yield, but also to ensure that funds are used appropriately and not simply thrown at solarizing boreholes where we lack complete information. Other conclusions from the team were that this process allowed for significant collective hands-on capacity building, a range of stakeholders, and that this work done will allow for more formal trainings going forward by those who were involved. In this case, the Solar Center for Training has been created in Abeche in Eastern Sudan. And finally, that this can be replicated elsewhere. So as mentioned up front, this work is still ongoing. So the team is into the next phase, and perhaps we'll be able to give updates on any further lessons learned next year or in the future. So let me quickly transition to the second abstract. Again, we allotted more of our time to the chat example, so we can't go into depth. I'm really going to quickly summarize the work here, which was more theoretical. We're all aware of the advantages of solarization, as well as the key constraints. One of the key constraints that we encounter when solarizing is the inherent limitation in moving to sunlight from a diesel generator that is pumping for 12, 18, 24 hours, especially given the constraint of the safe yield of the borehole. So this means either keeping the diesel generator to make up the difference that's pumping at night. This continues CO2 emissions and keeps diesel costs and the need for the supply chain, or we oversize the PV system accordingly, which begs the question where to store the energy. There are options, of course. We'll quickly speak about batteries here. You can also pump more water into elevated storage. And then there are some interesting innovative alternatives that we won't have time to explore one by one, but just to note that none of these are at present being used or trialed in UNHCR operations. So on battery banks, well, obviously the advantage is they store that daytime energy from the sun to allow pumping to take place at night. They're sensitive to high temperatures specifically. They have limitations compounded by those sensitivities meaning reduced lifespans as well. They have large footprints, often requiring excess investments in facilities, limited life cycles, and major environmental impacts all along the chain, from the mining of the input materials to their production, the weight and transport, to the limited recovery, recycling, and disposal options and practices, often leading to the release of heavy metals and other toxins into the environment. Quickly jumping to the conclusions, so I'm running out of time. At present, batteries are not recommended, and we don't recommend them to our own operations. Pumping to elevated tanks is with an optimized pumping schedule, again linking back to the last presentation, following rigorous testing, understanding the safe yield, etc. There was more to this abstract, but I'm out of time, so let me conclude by saying thank you to the colleagues who prepared the abstracts based on their work and research, and to the Emergency Environmental Health Forum for this opportunity to present the work from UNHCR and our partners. So thank you.